I never thought much about late-night walks until that one night. You know how it is. Life gets busy, and the only quiet time I have is after dinner. That's when I take Daisy, my little beagle, for a stroll around the neighborhood. It's a peaceful routine, just the two of us, walking under dim streetlights, breathing in the cool night air. But this one night felt different. I couldn't put my finger on it. Daisy and I were halfway through our usual route when we passed by that new construction site. It's been there for months. Nothing unusual about it. But Daisy stopped dead in her tracks, ears flat, whining softly. She started pulling back on her leash, like she didn't want to go any further. I laughed it off at first. "Come on, girl, it's just an empty lot." I gave her a gentle tug, and she reluctantly followed, but she kept looking back, her body tense. That's when I heard it. A faint crunch of gravel behind us. It was subtle, like someone trying to match my steps, staying just far enough to not be noticed. I stopped and turned around, expecting to see some jogger or maybe a stray dog. But there was no one. Just the dark stretch of road and the half-built frame of a house silhouetted against the moonlight. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just my imagination. But Daisy, she wouldn't stop trembling. As we walked on, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. You know when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up? It was like that. I tried to focus on the sound of my own footsteps, but then there it was again, another crunch, this time closer. I stopped so abruptly that Daisy nearly tripped over herself. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing in the stillness. No answer. I felt stupid standing there, talking to the darkness, but I swear I wasn't imagining it. Daisy started barking then, loud and frantic, pulling on the leash like she wanted to bolt. My heart was racing now, and I didn't wait to find out what was going on. I turned around and started walking fast. Too fast, probably, but the footsteps? They didn't stop. By the time I reached my street, I was practically running. Daisy was barking like crazy, and my chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. When we finally got to my house, I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped them. I shoved the door open, pulled Daisy inside, and slammed it shut behind me. I stood there for a second, catching my breath, then peeked through the curtains. At first, I didn't see anything. The street was quiet, just like always. But then, under the streetlight, I saw him, or it. A tall figure, just standing there, completely still. He was looking right at my house, like he knew I was watching. I froze. My first thought was to call the cops, but I didn't even know what to say. There's a guy standing on my street. That doesn't exactly scream emergency. Besides, what if he left before they got here? So, I just stood there, staring back, waiting for him to move. And then he did. Not towards me, thank God, but into the shadows. 1 second he was there, and the next gone. I didn't sleep much that night. Every little noise made me jump, and Daisy didn't settle down until hours later. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just some guy taking a shortcut, or maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But Daisy, she wouldn't even go near the door. Over the next few days, I started noticing little things. My trash can was knocked over one morning, and I found footprints in the dirt near the side of the house. They weren't mine. One night, about a week later, I thought I saw someone standing at the edge of my yard. It was quick, just a flash of movement, but it was enough to send my heart racing again. I turned on all the lights, grabbed a baseball bat, and walked outside. There was nothing there. I don't take late-night walks anymore. Daisy doesn't even ask for them, which is weird because she used to love them. I still think about that night, though, and I always wonder, was it just a coincidence? Or was someone really following me? I didn't think much about taking Charlie out for his usual evening walk. It was just another calm night, the kind where the air felt crisp but not too cold. We strolled through the same quiet streets we always did. Charlie, my golden Labrador, was his usual self, sniffing every bush and dragging me toward random scents. Everything felt routine, until we turned the corner onto the alley. That's when I saw it. The van was just sitting there, parked halfway in the shadows of the alley. It looked old, with a faded white exterior. There were no plates, and the windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see a thing inside. I wouldn't have paid much attention to it if Charlie hadn't started growling. He never growled. He barked at squirrels, sure, but this was different. His hackles were up, and he wouldn't stop pulling toward the van. "Come on, Charlie," I said, tugging on his leash, trying to steer him away. That's when I heard it, the low rumble of the engine turning on. My heart skipped a beat. The van started creeping forward, its headlights off. It wasn't speeding or anything, just slowly rolling toward us. My instincts kicked in. I yanked Charlie's leash and bolted. I didn't even think about where I was running. My legs just carried me as fast as they could. The sound of the van's engine hummed behind me, and every time I glanced over my shoulder, it was still there, moving at a crawl like it was toying with us. I spotted an open gate leading into someone's yard and dashed inside, dragging Charlie with me. We crouched behind a fence, and I clamped a hand over Charlie's mouth to keep him from barking. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure whoever was in the van could hear it. The van rolled past the yard, so slow it felt like time had stopped. I could barely breathe as I watched it pause for a moment, then speed off down the street. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. The image of that van kept replaying in my head. The way it had no plates, how it had followed us, the deliberate slowness of its movements. It was all too weird. I tried convincing myself it was nothing, maybe just some lost driver who didn't realize how creepy they seemed. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling, so I decided to mention it to a neighbor, Mrs. Carter. She was one of those people who always seemed to know what was happening in the area. As soon as I described the van, her face went pale. "I've seen that van before," she said, her voice trembling. "It's been lurking around here for the past week. Always at night." That's when I called the police. I told them everything. The alley, the van, how it had followed me. The officer on the phone listened carefully, then asked me something that sent chills down my spine. "Has anyone gone missing in your area recently?" I didn't know what to say. Why would he ask that? He explained there had been a series of abductions in nearby neighborhoods, all involving unmarked vans. Hearing that made everything worse. I couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened if I hadn't run or if the van had caught up to me. The police promised to send someone to patrol the area, but that didn't make me feel much safer. Every night after that, I avoided the alley, but I couldn't avoid the fear. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Other cars that seemed out of place, people sitting too long in their vehicles near my house. One time, I swear I saw the same van parked a few blocks away, but by the time I called the police, it was gone. The days turned into weeks, and while the van didn't show up again, the paranoia stayed. I jumped at shadows, double-checked my locks, and stopped walking Charlie at night. Then one evening, the police called. They'd found a van matching the description in connection with a suspect. It wasn't conclusive, but they believed it was part of a larger ring targeting isolated neighborhoods. Hearing that brought some relief, but I wasn't the same. Even now, every time I see a van parked on the street, my stomach tightens. I still take Charlie on walks, but only during the day. And when we pass by that alley, he always pulls at the leash, growling softly, as if warning me never to let my guard down again.